Hey there, I'm so excited to do another shoot breakdown video for you. Now today we're tackling a super popular image, and it's this one right here. It's a grid product pattern type photo. I'm not sure the right name to call it. If you know, let me know in the comments below. But my name is Eugene from Workerbee Supply, and we're a photography and video production studio in Toronto. And if you're interested in knowing how to make this image, you're in the right place. Let's dive into it. So first things first, let's get our background on the tabletop. I am using a white background here. I would recommend either using a background that's a similar color to what you want to achieve in the final composite, or just use white, and that way there's no kind of color bounce onto your product that then you later have to clean up. Once you have your background down, let's grab all the products and bring them onto the tabletop as well, so they're easy to access. We'll need to be replacing them fairly accurately, so if you have to move around a lot to get new products, you might nudge things, and that is something we definitely want to avoid. Next up, we're gonna set up our gear. Now, normally I would say the lens is up to you, but in this type of shot, I would really recommend using a longer lens. Basically, the longer your lens can be, we're using an 85 here, the less distortion essentially there will be in each product, and it'll look like you shot a whole series of products from far away rather than one product fairly close up. Now remember, once you set up your camera and product location, you're not going to want to move anything that includes your lighting, your camera, or the product from its sort of rough spot. So when you're composing the image, maybe pick one of the larger products that you have in your collection. Maybe you're only using one, that's fine too. But pick the largest product and sort of frame up using that one, or just leave yourself enough room that the largest product will fit. The worst thing you would have to do is if you go shoot a bunch of products and then on your final one you realize you have to zoom out and change your focal length. We definitely don't want to do that, so keep that in mind when you're setting them up. When dialing in your lighting, you can use kind of any type of lighting setup you want, but you just need to keep it consistent. So if your different products have different kind of qualities to them, maybe test it out to make sure it looks good with each product. And then, once you have it, it's really fixed in that position. I really like the sort of hard light look because it gives you some nice shadows, which adds another kind of element of pattern to the photo. You can definitely do it with softer lighting. However, you won't get that hard, crisp shadow look that seems to be so popular these days. All right, with the background set up, camera set, any flags we need in the right spot, we're ready to shoot. So essentially, we're gonna just cycle through all the products. A couple things to keep in mind, first, when you're moving from product to product, make sure you kind of position them right in the same spot. I like to just put them on top of each other and slide the other one out of the way and drop the one on top down. And then also I would recommend, if your product has clear labels on it or a clear direction, make sure you have that direction lined up across all of your products. And similarly, something I like to do is just shoot a few variations with the piece turned a little bit. That way in post we have a little more flexibility, and that's something I'm always trying to do on shoots is give ourselves a little bit of safety and backup, so when we go into post, if things don't turn out quite as planned, we have some other options that we can work with. For this last piece, I'm taking one of the products, which is this almond cream, and I'm opening it up and putting a spoon in there. I like to include a sort of random element or a bit of randomness in this pattern to kind of give it a focal point. So you'll see it when we put the image together what I mean, but think of something that could be a little quirky or a little out of the ordinary to sort of break up the pattern and the repetition and kind of cement your eye in that place. Sweet. Now that the photography part is done, let's dive into Photoshop and get cracking. I'm gonna open up the images in Lightroom and go through and make my selects. Basically, I'm looking for consistency across all the images in terms of which way they're facing, which way the product is facing, and the labels. And then I'm gonna make a selection and I'm gonna go ahead and start editing the photos. And I'm gonna do one edit and apply it to all of the photos. So get it nice and crispy, nice and clean, get the color, tone, contrast, everything you need perfect and dialed in, and then just apply that edit to the rest of your photos. And then I'm gonna bring in that entire set of photos that we're gonna need to comp together as a layer stack in Photoshop. Now that we have all the products in separate layers in one file, we're gonna go through and cut out each product. Now, I'm gonna cut them out without the shadow, but it's important to use masks so we can kind of turn them on and off and see the shadow later on. This part can get a little tedious, so I like to recommend something for you to listen to. And lately, I've been listening to a really cool sci-fi book. It's called The City We Became and is by N.K. Jemisin. And it's kind of a cool sci-fi fantasy book that takes place in New York, and different people embody different cities and kind of wild, unexpected things happen. I'm about halfway through it myself, but really enjoying it, so I highly recommend you check it out. Now that we've cut out the product, we're gonna create some shadows. Now, in this case, I'm just gonna use a shape and create a fake shadow. The reason I like to create fake shadows is because you're able to control them completely. You know, you can feather them, you can change the opacity, have a gradient fall off. And what I like to do is create all of these as smart objects so that I can continually tweak them throughout the process. Now, all we have to do is the same thing for all the other products that you might have in your composition. If some of the products have a more irregular shadow with a lot of unique shapes, I recommend kind of turning your mask off temporarily and using the actual shadow to create an outline with your path tool and create a shadow from there. So it's kind of like very accurate to the shape, and then you just drop it underneath your product layer. Now that our products are cut out, it's time to move on to the exciting part. Now, I know the one shot with the lid off isn't in here. I didn't forget it. We're gonna get to it later. But this is the moment where we get to really start creating this image and building out our composite. Now, one thing I would recommend is each of these products, you know, that has the product image, it has the shadow behind it, maybe it has some adjustment layers like cleanup already. I would recommend taking each one and bundling it up and turning it into a smart object. Basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna repeat these objects over and over again. And that way, if, you know, once we're further down the line working on the image, we can do cleanup to only one of the images and it'll permeate across all of them. So for each unique product, create its own smart object, and then we get to start duplicating it and building out our pattern. The way I do this is I pull up a grid and then start creating a single row and kind of thinking of the order that I want the pieces to appear in. Play with the spacing a little bit. This is where the grid comes in. You really want even spacing kind of between the pieces so that your grid lines up. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna build out a full row, then we're gonna copy that row down to the next one, shift it over again, copy it to the next one, shift it over again, and we should have a repeating pattern by the end of it. Now's a great time to mention that if you're enjoying this video, you should hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. But also, we recently did another shoot breakdown video where we showed you how to make a floating product cluster type image that people have been responding to really well. So if that's something you're interested in, hit this link or stick around to the end of the video. Now, where were we? So we have our main grid laid out, but the white background is not really what I had in mind, and I think this image could really use a pop of color. I'm thinking of something red or pinkish to play off of the product. I really like this pink we landed on, but one of the things that's been bothering me is the zigzag pattern that I've noticed between the butters in the image. So I'm just gonna kind of tweak the pattern a little bit to make all of the kind of same products go in a nice row diagonally. I think that'll just kind of give it a better feel. Now we're really starting to get close to the end, and we're gonna go and grab that open lid bottle and we're gonna drop it in to kind of create a bit more of a dynamic scene. So once you have it cut out, I like to just move it around and kind of try a few different places until you find one that kind of like lands really well within your composition. As you can see with this extra piece, the shadow from the spoon coming out kind of juts out, and this is something I played with when shooting it to make sure that shadow was going in the right direction. And I actually really like how I'm able to place it underneath one of the other objects next to it. It really makes it feel like the pieces are in a single scene together when they're kind of interacting a little bit that way, rather than just all comped together in post, which, don't tell anyone, is what we did. So now everything's in the right place. Shadows are all good. We like the pattern. We have the color down. We're gonna go into each of those smart objects, you know, for each product, and we're gonna do cleanup, and that'll kind of ripple across anytime that smart object is used in the file. So just take some time and do as much cleanup as you'd like. Honestly, the more cleanup you do and the more kind of like fine tuning you do at this stage, that's what really elevates it to that like extra high level commercial look. So just clean up anything that's messy, any imperfections, anything that's distracting, and just get a really nice clean image for each of these products. Now that our composite is complete and everything is together in the right place, let's do a few final touches to really bring it all together and elevate this image. The first thing we're gonna have to do is add grain to our background layer. Now, if you remember, this is just a layer we created from scratch, so it's completely noise-free, which doesn't really mesh with the product photos themselves, which will inevitably have a little bit of noise. So any layers I create like this, or anything I do a lot of cleanup on, I like to go in and add some noise after the fact to kind of match it to the rest of the photos that are being dropped into it. Once we have that, I also like to do some color tweaks, overall, to give it a nice feel and kind of give it an extra pop if needed. And then finally, let's do some sharpening to really punch everything up and have a really crispy image. And then now the image is pretty much done. I'd love to know what you think. I'm super happy with how this turned out, and I think it's a really cool look to try on your own at home. Our client loved this image, so that makes me very happy, but I'd love to know what you think. Please drop us a comment down below telling us what you think, if you've made these images, if you have any trouble or have any questions. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up, and make sure you hit subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And if you are subscribed, hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. If you enjoyed this video particularly and want to see some other shoot breakdowns, hit back and go into our photography playlist. Check out this floating product cluster shoot breakdown. It's really fun, and I really love that image as well. It's for the same client, different product. But yeah, I think that's all for me. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.